This year's Human Rights Day falls at a time we'll never forget. COVID-19 has taken us by storm and shaken our world. A tragedy followed by an extraordinary opportunity to recover better. This Human Rights Day is a call to action. A call for all of us to seize this opportunity and build the world we want. For that, we must accept the lessons from this crisis. First one, end discrimination of any kind. Like pre-existing conditions that make individuals more fragile, gaps in respecting human rights have made all society more vulnerable. If anyone is at risk, everyone is at risk. Discrimination, exclusion, and other human rights violation harms us all. The second is reduced widespread inequalities. Universal social protection, universal health coverage, and other systems for the delivery of fundamental rights are not luxuries. They keep society standing and can shape a more equitable future. Third, encourage participation, especially from young people. All voices have a right to be heard. Fourth, increase and intensify our resolve and efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, a concrete agenda for universal human rights. These are not just the right things to do, they are the smart things to do. And there's only one way they can be done, by standing up for human rights. Because human rights yield fair and resilient societies. They are the answer to this human crisis. Like the climate emergency, COVID-19 reminds us that we are bound together as one humanity. We must act. Working together, we can recover better. With strong solidarity, we can build a world that is more resilient, sustainable, and just. Join me in standing up for human rights.
That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, end quote. This is not an American concept, not even a Western concept. It's the universal standpoint from which any further reasoning on human rights have to start. Right to life as the first truth, that declaration says. This forbids violence and abuse. It is in fact impossible to elaborate on human rights for a dead person. Liberty. With no liberty, there is no humanity, then no rights. The first among human liberty is religious liberty, since it regulates the most fundamental human question, does God exist or not? Hence, how human beings organize their lives and societies. From religious freedom come the right to free speech, free press, free assembly, and free education. Thirdly, the pursuit of happiness. The true meaning of this expression is that out of their right to life and their liberty, human beings should be let free to envision and promote a society which can help them to live the good life. Tai Ji Men case comes in here. Tai Ji Men is a religious group, probably better defined as a spiritual way, which originated in Taiwan. For almost a quarter of a century now, Tai Ji Men has suffered a staggering persecution by some agencies and branches of the Taiwanese government, in spite of the fact that courts of law have found Tai Ji Men group and Tai Ji Men members guilty of nothing. The persecution of Tai Ji Men has the face of fiscal persecution. Tai Ji Men members are in fact persecuted by the government. Taxes. Taxes are a great power in the hand of a government and can destroy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Oftentimes, taxes are the preferred tool of persecution in democratic society, as opposed to the direct violent persecution used by totalitarian or tyrannical regimes. Nonetheless, fiscal persecution is an open violation of human rights. And this is why we are presenting today the case of Tai Ji Men on the Human Rights Day. In the case of Tai Ji Men, where some agencies and branches of the Taiwanese government persecute this group falsely, describing it as a cult, fiscal persecution is also a violation of religious liberty. CESNUR, the Center for the Study on New Religious Movement, based in Turin, Italy, and Human Rights Without Frontier, based in Brussels, Belgium, have crafted, written, and published a white paper to explain and detail the Tai Ji Men case of justice denied. It is then my pleasure to give now the floor to the director of CESNUR, well-known sociologist Massimo Introvigne, authors of tens of books and hundreds of articles, for his presentation of this important white paper exposing the truth. Mr. Introvigne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco. And in this short introduction, I will try to answer three questions. What is a white paper? Why a white paper on Tai Ji Men case was needed and needed today? And what is the main content of the white paper? Number one, what is a white paper? The term white paper was created by Winston Churchill in 1922 to designate an in-depth, independent report on an important international issue by a group of experts. In fact, the first white paper ever was devoted to an international problem which is still with us today, the question of the coexistence of Jews and Arabs in the Palestinian scenario. And many other followers produced both by governments and increasingly often by independent NGOs. So white paper designates an independent, in-depth investigation of a crucial problem by experts. Number two, why was a white paper on the Tai Ji Men case needed and needed now? The Tai Ji Men case is internationally important. There are two ways of denying human rights, and unfortunately, many focus on the first only. The first way of denying human rights is violent persecution, typical of totalitarian regime, where people are arrested, detained, tortured, executed. It will still be a dangerous world if human rights were only violated by totalitarian, non-democratic regimes. But in a way, human rights violations will be easily identified and contained. Unfortunately, there is also the second kind of violation of human rights, which prevails in democratic, non-totalitarian countries, and this is the administrative violation of human rights, where either governments or rogue bureaucrats acting independently of the governments, but in some way tolerated by the governments, attack unpopular minorities and individuals and violate their human rights. As Marco said, main target of violation of human rights are religious and spiritual groups, and the main tool to breach these human rights in democratic countries is the unfair use of taxes. So this is why the Tai Ji Men case is not a minor case. It's a crucially internationally important case, and it is appropriate to present it on Human Rights Day. Number 3, what is the main content of the white paper? In the white paper, we present 3 points. What is Tai Ji Men? How and why was it persecuted in 1996? And how its human rights are still infringed today. Tai Ji Men is a menpai, something similar to a school of Qigong and martial arts. And it's actually a very ancient school rooted in esoteric Taoism, and today incarnated in the teachings of its leader, Dr. Hong Tao Tse. So it seems a peaceful, law-abiding, quiet movement. Actually, it's more than that. It's known throughout the world for its promotion of traditional culture, international peace, and dialogue. So, second point, why was this peaceful and actually a positive group persecuted in 96? Well, in Chinese, there is an expression which has now become well known for its cavalier use in mainland China, Seijiao. It is sometimes wrongly translated as cults or evil cults, but its translation is unorthodox teachings. And in China, it appeared in the Ming era, so it's a very old designation. And it was consistently used to attack groups, the governments, for many reasons perceived as dangerous or anti-government or not supporting the government enough. 1996, Taiwan had this first direct election of the president, and the power that be suspected that some religious movements, large and small, were not supporting the party that actually won, and started a crackdown against several movements they designated as Seijiao. And the Tai Ji Men became part of this crackdown, paradoxically, because it had not taken political sides. Just a footnote, many in the West who read the documents about the 96 case were very much surprised that the prosecutor, who had a personal vendetta against Tai Ji Men, accused Dr. Hong, the leader of Tai Ji Men, of raising goblins. That is to evoke spirits, which is totally foreign to the philosophy of Tai Ji Men. But perhaps this is not totally surprising, because if you read some scholarly studies of how from the Ming era on, Seijiao were persecuted in China, you will see that the accusation of evoking spirits, raising goblins, was very common. actually, according to some Chinese scholar, was one of the two most common tools used to persecute groups labeled as Sejao, including Christian groups, which obviously had nothing to do with raising goblins. So inventing the accusation of raising goblins is part of a very old tradition of religious discrimination and persecution. And it's perhaps not totally surprising it was used against Tai Ji Men. Last, why is this persecution continuing now? Tai Ji Men won all its court cases repeatedly, constantly. It was declared totally innocent of any criminal charge. Even monetary compensation was given to Dr. Hong and its co-defendants for the wrongdoings perpetrated by prosecutor Hu against them. So why it is continuing now? Because for reasons which are perhaps difficult to understand in the West, it seems in Taiwan, the tax administration can operate independently of the courts and independently of the government and independently of advice received by the courts. And so they continue a tax case which should have been stopped long ago. And they claim that for one particular year, 1992, remedies have been exhausted. And so the original tax bill, which was based on illegal and faulty prosecution of Tai Ji Men, which totally failed in court, they claim that this tax bill is still valid. And based on this, properties belonging to Dr. Hong were seized, unsuccessfully auctioned, and then confiscated. That shows tax persecution is the most evil, persistent, continuous persecution, and this shows that this persecution is still going on today. So that's why we have a white paper today, and that's why we invite all of you to read, spread, and make known to people in power and authority this white paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo, for this crystal clear exposition of the need of the white paper and what is Tai Ji Men and why Tai Ji Men is persecuted. The white paper produced by CESNUR and Human Rights Without Frontier will be from today on available online, so our followers and readers will find it easily and can go into depth with that. Our program now proceeds with another second video, an extract from the Ministerial to Advance Freedom of Religion or Belief during the side event organized by CESNUR recently in late November, titled Tax Justice and Religious Freedom, the Tai Ji Men Case and Beyond.
It is our civic and moral duty as representatives of
the United States State Department has hosted the Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom.
For hosting this year's Ministerial to Advance Freedom of Religion or Belief.
Targeting religious minorities, Bangladesh has steadfastly.
I would like to welcome you to the second day of the Ministerial to Advance Freedom of Religion or Belief.
Through your tireless efforts to lift up those without religious freedom, you move all of us.
I think that we should all stand by Tai Ji Men, because again, as the video brilliantly said, the battle of Tai Ji Men is the battle for the most important, most essential human right, religious freedom, is the battle for freedom, is the battle for liberty, is the battle for justice, it is the battle for equal treatment of all before the law.
Let me conclude by saying I commend Tai Ji Men for not giving in. It is never too late to do the right thing, and the government of Taiwan should do the right thing and eliminate the tax from 1992, which is just absurd considering what has happened for 1991 and the other years, and to restore the property that was unlawfully seized.
Although there was no concrete evidence at all for the charges, Prosecutor Hu did not drop the case, but instead sent it to private prosecutors. The defendants were then subjected to a series of lengthy court appearances and hearings. This was very costly for the defendants, as it took immense resources in the form of time and money, as well as causing irreparable damage to their reputation.
But they just sell our property. That's why we went to the street. I don't remember how many times I was on the street shouting for the justice. I got a sunburn. I lost my voice many, many times. And I keep thinking, why I'm doing this? And why they are not listening to people what we said. I feel so bad. But every time when I listen to that home, keep encourage us. Please insist what we are doing, because this is the right thing to do.
The ongoing case involving Tai Ji Men is unacceptable, to say the least, generally speaking, and also very difficult to understand from a legal, purely legal point of view. For instance, basing on the legal principle of estoppel, it should not be argued or asserted that Tai Ji Men have to pay taxes for the disputed year 1992, as there should be no dispute at all.
So that's why we plan to continue to study the Tai Ji Men case and to ask justice for Tai Ji Men, because this case may become a bad or perhaps a good important international precedent. And our next step will be to publish a white paper summing up what happened and calling the attention of the international community on the importance of this case.
Study and publish seems to be the two words that come out of these very peculiar case. Study because we need to know, we need to try to understand this very strange case, and publish and spread the truth on what is happening to this group, Tai Ji Men, totally unlawfully and unjustly. It is now my special pleasure to introduce Mr. Willy Fautré, who is the director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels, the ONG, the NGO, which together with CESNUR has produced the white paper, which is the main object of our events today. So, Mr. Fautré, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation. This press conference about the arbitrary auction of Tai Ji Men's property in August last is really timely and welcome on Human Rights Day. The abrupt intervention of the Taxation Bureau in August was allegedly due to a tax bill dating back to 1992, as it was already said, despite this bill having been successfully contested through Taiwanese courts. The latest move of the Taxation Bureau fits a pattern of prejudice against Tai Ji Men and its spiritual leader. It is also likely retaliation for several other tax cases concerning Tai Ji Men that were lost in courts by the Taxation Bureau. Some suspect that there was a profit-making objective behind this auction. Indeed, officers of the National Tax Bureau normally receive a bonus based on the taxes they collected. Officers at the enforcement agency also receive a bonus from the enforcement results of the auction. And finally, government officers involved in the Tai Ji Men case, both at the National Tax Bureau and the enforcement agency, received a bonus from handling the case. It is because of all these alluring bonuses that some scholars suspect that Tai Ji Men's case was a fabricated case. One of the bureaucrats that Tai Ji Men suspects of abuse of power is Li Guifen, who is the chief enforcement officer of Hsinchu branch of Administrative Enforcement Agency under the Minister of Justice. This suspicion is supported by a document with Li Guifen's seal that outlines the bonus allocation from the auction of Tai Ji Men's properties before the official announcement of the auction had been published. On 19th of September of this year, a Tai Ji Men member, Mrs. Wang, planned to use a right to freedom of expression guaranteed by the Constitution of Taiwan to denounce the lucrative nature of this auction. She was about to protest on the street with other people while holding a sign that named Li Guifen when she was suddenly surrounded by several police officers. The officers stopped the demonstration before it had even started. They demanded that Mrs. Wang present her ID and then arrested her without any stated cause. When other volunteers asked whether they were in an area restricted from demonstrations and why they were arrested Mrs. Wang, the police did not respond. Instead, they asked that everyone shows their IDs and ordered the protesters to leave. They also threatened that anyone recording the scene would face consequences. By disrupting the planned demonstration, the authorities did not allow these individuals to exercise their right to freedom of assembly and protest. The protesters finally cooperated and provided their IDs. The police officers checked them, then left for about 30 minutes. And when they returned, Mrs. Wang no longer had the alleged controversial sign. However, police officers searched her bag without a warrant and without her consent. They discovered a different poster and coerced her into falsely claiming that it was the same sign. After this, they declared that she would be prosecuted, although they still had not told her what for. Mrs. Wang was taken to the police station by more than a dozen police officers, again without being informed of the charges against her. Now, who is that Mrs. Wang? She is not a troublemaker. Mrs. Wang has never been stopped or arrested by the police before this incident. Mrs. Wang did not threaten the national security nor disturb public order on that day. Mrs. Wang is just an ordinary Taiwanese citizen. She is 60 years old, she is married, has 2 children, she's been a housewife for her whole life and a member of Tai Ji Men for 29 years. During the interrogation at the police station, Mrs. Wang was treated with complete disrespect. she was accused of publicly defaming a public servant, Li Guinfen. In the meantime, a group of protesters gathered outside the police station. One of them was Professor Che Lung Chen, repeatedly asked why they had arrested Mrs. Wang. The police again refused to answer, claiming that they could not comment on an ongoing prosecutorial investigation, despite it being only a police investigation. Professor Chen accused the police officers of abusing their power and urged them to release Mrs. Wang immediately, as there was no written complaint over alleged defamation or intimidation. However, instead, the police transferred her to the prosecutor's office with no regard for her age or physical or mental state of health. She was deprived of her freedom and interrogated for 8 hours in all. 8 hours. She was not released by the prosecutor until 2 o'clock in the night. During the interrogation, Mrs. Wang said she wanted to sue the police officers for the arbitrary arrests, but her verbal complaint was blatantly ignored by the prosecutor. The arrest caused immense mental and physical distress for Mrs. Wang. After hours of interrogation and at her age, first at the police station and then at the prosecutor's office, she fainted and was sent to hospital. A doctor there diagnosed her with acute stress and trauma syndrome. In conclusion, Taiwan has a reputation of being a democratic country. Articles 11 and 14 of the Constitution guarantee the freedom of speech and assembly. As such, Mrs. Wang's sign was legally protected by the Constitution, which read, and I quote, Li Guifen, head of the Xingshu branch of the Administrative Enforcement Agency, how much bonus did you get from handling the Tai Ji Men's case? 100,000 new Taiwanese dollars, 1 million or 10 million? Give it back, unquote. In this case, the Taiwanese authorities failed to behave democratically and instead abused their power to silence citizens. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Willy, for your very detailed story with very important details and very interesting insights in this peculiar case. We now give the floor to direct witnesses of this persecution. We have 6 Tai Ji Men DZ, a word which more or less indicates students or practitioner of this spiritual way. So members of the Tai Ji Men. We have 6 speakers, testimonies who will get us into what they witnessed and suffered. Let's begin with Ms. Ling Chin Chen, community manager in Paris. The floor is yours.
So, hello everyone. Now I will tell you my memory. So in 1996, I was a college student majoring in French. On December 19, the press started to report a raid on Tai Ji Men by Investigation Bureau. My fellow students asked me about the reported fraud of Tai Ji Men. On December 24, I went back from home for holiday. My house was empty, but it was searched. I was wondering what was going on. A phone call broke the silence. My father called and asked me to get some papers. Before he finished talking, someone took the phone from him and gave me the address in Taipei. Not having a clue, I took the papers and went to the address only to realize it was a Taipei Investigation Bureau. but I did not get a chance to see my father. My father was detained 4 months without any evidences of crime. I started to feel scared as father was not with us. And the following Christmas and Chinese New Year holiday were really bad for us. We were very scared, and we have no holiday mood for any of us in the family. During that period of time, we were all in deep blue and anxiety. I suspected being taped. I felt being pointed behind my back when wearing Tai Ji Men uniforms. Many years later, we realized mother tried to hide a lot of things from the protection of me and my sister. She was under a lot of pressure from my uncles who read the biased reporting in the paper. They thought my father was a disgrace to the family. My father was held in custody for months just because he did not yield to the intimidation from Prosecutor Ho and insisted that Dr. Hong has real kung fu. I received threatening notes in school. I was questioned by teachers and students. I filed reports with school authority, but there was nothing they could do. Later, I and my sister got the chance to go abroad for study, so we took off. I came to France and she came to the US. We just wanted to get away from Taiwan. And my father received state compensation for wrongful detention after 10 years. But tax office continued to ignore evidences from Tai Ji Men. Tax office and enforcement agency worked together to auction off properties of Tai Ji Men in the past August. My father did not want us to be worried, so he really discussed Tai Ji Men case with us. Even though father missed a lot, we did not move back to Taiwan for security reasons. We don't know what was going on. He passed away in 2014, and he never got a chance to see he never got the chance to see justice prevail in Tai Ji Men case. So when I talked about Tai Ji Men case with my French friends, they were mostly shocked. Some of them think there must be something wrong with us, so that we are mistreated. This kind of saying really upsets me a lot, but I can understand. This is the result of biased reporting and common practice of blaming victims. However, I believe justice will eventually prevail. We have insisted for so long and given so many chances to the evil government officers. It's about time justice will arrive after we have gathered so many supports from victims of abusive tax practices and human rights organizations like you and our friends. The lies of the evil government officers will be exposed, and we hope conscience will be inspired and justice prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ling Chi Chen, for your testimony and your words of hope. It's very bad when a guilty man or woman is free to the streets, but it's even worse when an innocent person is unlawfully jailed. The floor now goes to our second Tai Ji Men DZ, Mr. Shangbin Wen, sales manager in Taipei, Taiwan. He will address us through a pre-recorded video.
Distinguished professors, experts, scholars, and honored guests, good day. My name is Wen Shangbin. I'm a Tai Ji Men Dizi. I'd like to share with you an example of gross human rights abuse in the Tai Ji Men case, and the victim was my aunt, Wen Xiaochen. On December 19, 1996, when I was 8 years old, Prosecutor Ho Quan-ren commanded hundreds of investigators and armed police to raid and search facilities of Tai Ji Men. Accompanied by journalists, he falsely claimed that my Shifu, Dr. Hong, and Tai Ji Men defrauded people. That drew a lot of media attention. The following day, my aunt, who was also a Tai Ji Men Dizi, was interviewed by the media. She voiced her support for Tai Ji Men and explained what we did at Tai Ji Men. What she said was true. However, affected by negative news reports about Tai Ji Men, her husband was very angry with her. He would even lock her out of her own house when he learned that she went to Tai Ji Men. On the evening of December 23rd, she was locked out of her house and had no choice but to stay at a Tai Ji Men sister's home. On the early morning of the following day, she received an urgent call from her husband, telling her that her home had been ransacked by the police and investigators, and they demanded that she go to the designated office of the Investigation Bureau immediately. Her husband sounded fearful and blamed her for what had happened. On Christmas Eve, she was too sad and frightened to eat breakfast, but she still had to pretend to be calm. She called to find a Tai Ji Men sister to accompany her, and also called her family to comfort them and calm their fears. The interrogation by the investigator was lengthy, and she was not released until about 6 p.m. She was originally a senior executive of a well-known publishing company. Because of the negative public attention circulating the case, she was demoted and went through a family breakup. Whenever she recalled the day of the interrogation, she would look and sound terrified. My other family members blamed her as well. All these pressures made my aunt's health deteriorate rapidly. Unfortunately, she passed away in 1999 at the age of 44. Before she left this world, she was in tears as she felt being wronged. In 1996-1997, Prosecutor Ho said he would arrest many people, making us very anxious, fearing that we could be the next victims. Abusing the power entrusted to him, Prosecutor Ho violated our human rights. The pain he inflicted upon us is so deep that it would be hard for an outsider to imagine. In March 2002, the Control Yuan issued an investigation report and listed 8 major violations of law by Prosecutor Ho in his handling of the Tai Ji Men case. It sent a letter to the Ministry of Finance asking it to take disciplinary actions against the prosecutor. His violations of law included abuse of power and illegal search, seriously violating our human rights. As the prosecutor knowingly broke the law, my aunt suffered terrible abuse from him and passed away. By sharing our true story here, we are revealing the wrongdoings of the government officials. We hope that those who have violated the law and abused their power will get punished. We hope that human rights can be truly protected and no one will suffer the same thing again. Thank you all.
Thank you for this contribution, Mr. Shang Bin-wan. It's a real pity when a government, which is supposed to protect people, instead goes after people and make them suffer. We now have a second video contribution from Mr. Alan Shi, Operation Manager in Los Angeles, the United States of America.
Distinguished guests, experts, scholars, and online viewers, good day. I'm Alan Shi. I work as Operational Manager at an international electronics company in the United States. It's my honor to attend this forum and share my personal experience of being a victim of human rights abuse. I hope through my sharing, people can understand how easily we might violate others' human rights and how we can protect our and others' rights. The first year when I came to the United States, my school held the event of International Students' Day to welcome international students and introduce the culture of Thanksgiving to all of us. At the time, the school asked us to wear our traditional outfits and share our cultures with each other. I decided to wear Tai Ji Men outfit and share one important thing I learned from my Shifu at Tai Ji Men. That is, it's not good if things are going well for you only. Only when everyone is doing well, that is too good. I also share that through practicing Tai Ji Men Qigong, I have learned to cultivate my body and heart, and I have also participated in cultural exchange programs with my Shifu and other Tai Ji Men members to spread the message of love and peace to the world. The participants around me expressed their admiration for me and said I was very lucky to join such a group with a very good culture, allowing me to not only strengthen my body and cultivate my heart, but also spread love to the world. I told them, I came from Taiwan. Taiwan is Formosa, and Tai Ji Men is the pride of Taiwan. I joined a cultural exchange program with my sifu and traveled to New York, Australia, Brazil, South Korea, and Austria. We heard people in the audience say, "I love Taiwan, I love Tai Ji Men, love and peace," loud and clear. But when I shared our peace trips with my Taiwanese friends, I felt insulted. My upper classmates said to me, "You know, Tai Ji Men raised goblins." My landlord kindly reminded me, Tai Ji Men is still in a lawsuit. My colleagues try to ignore me when I talk about Tai Ji Men. I joined Tai Ji Men for a very simple reason. My parents just hoped that I could grow up healthy and safe because I was often sick when I was little. Back then, I remember I was sick almost 300 days a year. But the situation changed. After I started practicing Qigong, I became healthier and happier. My siblings, relatives, even my classmates joined Tai Ji Men one after another after they noticed my parents and my changes. But in the past 24 years, not only myself, my fellow Tai Ji Men brothers and sisters, but also my Shifu and Shimu, has been silently enduring bias and slander from our fellow Taiwanese people and has been treated unfairly by the Taiwan government. My aunt was Tai Ji Men Dizi. My parents recommended Tai Ji Men to her. After the negative news reports about Tai Ji Men, my uncle strongly discouraged my aunt from practicing Qigong. My aunt suspended her practice in order to maintain harmony in her family. 3 years ago, my aunt passed away from cancer. To this day, my mother is still in deep pain for losing her beloved sister. Every time, when she thinks of my aunt, she couldn't help shedding tears. She also complained to my uncle, saying that if my aunt had continued practicing Qigong, she would have lived longer and could have talked to my mother as before. Because on my mother's side, my grandparents and great-grandparents all live in a long life. My mother is in her 80s. She is healthy and can take care of herself. Her siblings are healthy and can take care of themselves too. But only my aunt suffered from cancer and passed away at such a young age compared with our other family members. My mother cried and sighed. She could never talk to her sister or get her emotional support again. I grew up in a peaceful era, and I take a lot of things for granted. So when I first read a post by German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller after the Second World War, I didn't quite understand the post is. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. But now I got it. If I don't stand up for human rights, what happens to me could also happen to you sooner or later. I'm not exaggerating a danger or causing unnecessary worry or panic. I just hope that we can all see the truth clearly and be aware that even in this 21st century, if we don't fight for democracy, freedom, and human rights, they will be destroyed. For example, there is a documentary titled Epicur's Small Enough to Jail, which was nominated for Best Documentary Feature for the 90th Academy Awards. That is true but sad story, revealing a government's violation of principle of due process and persecution against its civilians. Guess what? It happened in the United States, which is widely known as a democratic and free country. Americans' democracy and freedom are kept alive through its people's respect for this value and their continued fight for human rights. It has only been 33 years since martial law was lifted in Taiwan. Therefore, I'm willing to stand up and share my personal story and the Tai Ji Men case for future generations and for a better legal and tax system. I'm here to call on the Taiwanese government. Please, listen to your people's voice, abolish bonus system, eliminate corrupt officers, and make Taiwan a role model for democracy in Asia, and make your people proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Xu, for your heartfelt plea, which remind us that it is not necessary to share one's belief to defend against the world their right to freedom and to humanity. It's now the turn of Ms. Gil Wong, student in medicine at the Science and the Humanities Department at the Johns Hopkins University. Ms. Wong,
hi, thank you for the introduction. Distinguished scholars, experts, and honored guests, it is my pleasure to be here and share my thoughts on the Tai Ji Men tax case. My name is Gil, and I'm a current junior in college, and I'm a proud Tai Ji Men Dizi. And today I'd like to use this opportunity to share a few stories of my experiences in Tai Ji Men. Like many of my generation, I initially joined Tai Ji Men because both my parents were Dizis. I was immediately introduced to a family of brothers and sisters from all walks of life and of all ages. I still remember so clearly memories of playing with other kids in the playroom while my parents were practicing Qigong. And as my family and I moved to California, I'm so fortunate to still be able to go to an academy here. English was not my native language, so when I had homework questions, brothers and sisters were very quick to help me. I enjoyed nights at the academy where everyone, while munching on snacks and drinking tea, conversed for hours and talk about life in general. All that is to say, Tai Ji Men has been my family for the entirety of the 20 years of my life. When I first heard about the Tai Ji Men tax case, I was unfamiliar with the legal terms and procedures. What was the most bizarre to me, however, was the fact that we were even prosecuted. I knew Shifu and Shimu, how they loved each and every one of their deeds and passed on invaluable wisdom. And I also knew brothers and sisters, how they constantly supported one another. So why did this persecution even start? That confused me the most. With time, I began to learn how the case started and how Prosecutor Ho defamed Tai Ji Men and Shifu based on false information. The media, to say the least, followed this pattern of slander and brought false information to the general public. Though I haven't experienced direct backlash myself, I've heard many firsthand stories of brothers and sisters like today who were ridiculed by their classmates in school, accused by their coworkers, forced to quit, just to name a few. To know how kind Shifu and brothers and sisters were and to have to hear what they have been through, it truly breaks my heart. Each story I hear prompts me to think about my experiences with Tai Ji Men and its members, which have all been positive and meaningful. In 2018, I had the opportunity to go to the United Nations headquarters in New York City with Shifu. It was my first time in such an important place surrounded by world leaders, so needless to say, I was amazed yet a little terrified. I was just a freshman in college, and to my left and right were influential leaders who have many accomplishments. But when I saw how Shifu interacted with them, talking like they were his friends and introducing his deeds to them, I came to realize that Shifu was so proud of us. Regardless of our background, we were Shifu's deeds. And like a proud parent, he shared the various cultural exchanges we partook in, the Tai Ji Men songs and dances we performed, and the sharings by brothers and sisters that showed internal growth. And I gradually felt so lucky to be there at the UN as Shifu's deeds. In response, many world leaders resonated with Shifu's message of love, peace, and conscience. I remember one ambassador shared that love was not a word she would frequently hear in UN meeting rooms. This was the first time that it was so heavily and importantly discussed, and she was glad that she had the opportunity to participate. Other world leaders shared their wishes to ultimately have love and peace in their respective countries. They were encouraged in their roles to make a positive impact and act on their conscience. A couple of years ago in April, I had the opportunity to co-host the World Citizen Day Forum. From listening to a range of perspectives of various professors and students, I realized that as a world citizen, each of us has a responsibility for what is happening in the world. And that is why I want to speak up, not only today, about the unjust Tai Ji Men case. The government's abuse of power and use of taxes to fight against fundamental human rights are not new. This is not the first time we're hearing about this. For example, back in 1773, American colonists who were angry at Britain for imposing taxation without representation revolted, and the Boston Tea Party marked a great political protest in history. And in instances of religious inequality, governments have targeted spiritual minorities. This cannot and should not continue. The injustice against Tai Ji Men has to stop, and 24 years has been long enough. It also keeps going in circles for no reason whatsoever. Obviously, the Supreme Court in Taiwan has already declared Tai Ji Men innocent and not guilty of tax evasion. Yet the Tax Bureau continues to try to tax us. A government agency illegally taxing its citizens and robbing them of their property is absolutely absurd. And the fact that we have to tell the government this simple fact for 24 years makes it even more so. We go to the streets and the presidential office to try to communicate, but they refuse to even speak with us or listen. Brothers and sisters have even faced confrontation by police, as mentioned earlier, that they aren't allowed to hold up signs on the streets. Is this what the government calls a democracy? Where is our freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and our right to fair taxes? As many professors and scholars have stated, this is not a case about money. It is about Tai Ji Men's justice and, in the broader sense, human rights. If it were about money, Tai Ji Men could have easily paid the taxes, which would have been less in amount than all the years of fighting for justice combined. But Shifu and Tai Ji Men Dizis follow our conscience and do what is right. Since I was young, I was able to witness be part of such a positive community, working together to not only become better people ourselves, but also to spread love and peace to those around me, like my close friends, and internationally. Shifu, along with brothers and sisters, have visited 101 countries, talking with world leaders and sharing the importance of conscience. If government officials listen to their conscience and do what is right, the unjust case would not even have begun. But we know nobody is perfect and we all make mistakes, but if the corrupt officials are able to awaken and correct their wrong now, the damage can still be mitigated and Taiwan can move towards a better future, where the government and its citizens live life cooperatively and fairly. Beyond that, once the tax case is resolved, it may become an important international precedent, showing that human rights can and should be preserved in light of conscience and justice. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Ji Wang, for expressing your feelings and sharing your insights with the passion typical of a young person who is very, very contagious for the good. It's now the turn of Ms. Ann Chen. She is an attorney at law in California as well as in Taiwan. Ms. Chen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for providing this opportunity for me to share my experience. I will never forget the night of December 19, 1996, when my parents and I went to one of the Tai Ji Men Academy in Taipei, and so many journalists videotaping the academy sign outside the academy. At the time, I was 7, naive and ignorant. I thought something good was happening, so the media came to report it. I turned on the TV as soon as I got home. To my surprise, the news reports were full of false information, saying that my Shifu defrauded people and that Tai Ji Men is a money-grubbing organization. I was extremely shocked. Ever since that day, the shadow of the media smear campaign against Tai Ji Men has been in my mind and has had a great impact on me. Before joining Tai Ji Men, my mother had a very serious hormonal imbalance and her condition didn't improve even after seeing many famous doctors. At that time, my uncle had already practiced Qigong at Tai Ji Men and urged us to join as well. By practicing Qigong, my mother's health has greatly improved. This has a big impact on me because I no longer worry about losing my mother because of her illness. I have loved going to Tai Ji Men since I was a child. My Tai Ji Men brothers and sisters are all very happy and kind, and I naturally feel the positive energy every time I go there. Tai Ji Men is like a big family. Under Shifu's guidance, we share life wisdom together. We take care of each other and make progress together. Because of my mother's successful experience, my parents recommended Tai Ji Men to many of my relatives. Before the 9291 incident, I had over 20 relatives cultivating their physical and mental health at Tai Ji Men. I'm very grateful to my Shifu and Tai Ji Men as I have achieved physical, mental, and spiritual health and balance. I'm also very thankful to Shifu for guiding me to enhance the value of my life. I'm honored to have had the opportunities to follow Shifu and travel all over the world, promoting love and peace through music, martial arts, and dance since I was 10. In 1999, Shifu led 1,200 brothers and sisters to participate in Seattle Seafair Torchlight Parade 50th anniversary celebration. It was my first time going abroad. I feel very honored because I was only 10, but I already had a chance to promote love and peace through cultural exchanges in the United States. Shifu teaches love and conscience, which are the keys to a peaceful mind, peaceful family, peaceful society, and peaceful world. I also follow Shifu Dr. Hong to participate in the 2012 UN Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio, Brazil. The then President of Costa Rica, Her Excellency Laura Miranda, ran the Bill of World Peace and Love and made the wish for peace to prevail among the peoples of the world and between human beings and nature. I was very touched by her wish. Her eyes were shining when she declared her wish. I believe when she governed her country or made any decisions after that, she would think of the wish for peace she made when she ran the bill. At that time, I finally realized why Shifu had been leading his deeds to do good deeds and be good people. He hopes that the world will get better and better. All of this is also an important manifestation of respect of mankind, human rights, the earth, and nature. However, Prosecutor Ho, who violated the law and abused his power, changed everything. After the 1219 incident, my relatives dared not to continue practicing Qigong at Tai Ji Men because they saw the false news reports. One of my uncles at a family gathering during Chinese New Year said angry to my parents and me in front of everyone, "You were all deceived." No matter how hard we tried to explain, no one wanted to believe what we said. In school, I had always been a good student with good character and excellent grades. And my teacher adored me, but after she knew that I was practicing Qigong at Tai Ji Men, her attitude suddenly changed. She even openly discouraged me from continuing practicing Qigong at Tai Ji Men. She said, "Stop wasting your time on meaningless things." As a child, I was very confused. Why would the TV news report about Tai Ji Men completely different from what I personally experienced? What makes me even more puzzled is why people prefer to believe the untrue news report, but didn't want to believe their relatives and friends who are closer to them and can explain to them in person. Not until I went to law school did I realize that the prosecutor's behavior was really a disgrace to the legal profession. He violated the principle that prosecutorial investigation should be confidential. The prosecutor tried to destroy a good organization and its members through the media just for his own reputation and interests. He kept releasing false information to the media, ruining my Shifu and Tai Ji Men's reputation. After smearing Tai Ji Men for 4 consecutive months, the negative impression of Tai Ji Men was deeply rooted in people's mind. Even though Tai Ji Men was later found innocent and not guilty of tax evasion or fraud by the Supreme Court, and the government awarded compensation to the innocent defendants who were detained, many people still retain the false impression of Tai Ji Men fabricated by the prosecutor 24 years ago. I remember one time when I was on the bus, I met a former classmate who I hadn't seen for a long time. He said, "I have always wanted to ask you a question. The media reported that Tai Ji Men and your Shifu debarred the people. Why have you been practicing Qigong at Tai Ji Men? I feel very, very hurt at the moment. At that time, Tai Ji Men had been declared non-guilty of fraud or tax evasion by the Supreme Court for 7 years. I realized some injuries, once inflicted, can never heal. I chose to study law because I deeply realized that only when people understand their rights can they protect themselves from being abused by those in power. I was only 7 at the start of the Tai Ji Men case. Now I have been a lawyer practicing law for nearly 10 years. As a lawyer, I know that the time, resources, and money required to fight against the government and those in power for truth and justice far exceed the amount of the tax bill. Tai Ji Men is unwilling to compromise because we know that succumb to the evil forces is to encourage them to continue to grow and bully others. Because many people sacrificed their lives to pursue the truth in the past, Taiwan is now able to enjoy democracy, freedom, and rule of law. Taiwan is where I grew up. I will always love her. It is easy to give in and give up on the pursuit of justice. It takes a lot of courage to persevere in the fight for truth and justice. But this is what my Shifu has always taught us, insisting on doing the right things. As practitioners of self-cultivation, we cannot make any unethical compromise. We will never give up on the long road to redress the injustice resulting from the fabricated case. The tradition of the Shifu-Dizi relationships has been preserved from generation to generation at Tai Ji Men for thousands of years. How could the Taxation Bureau distort the nature of and the fact about this tradition and undermine it with unlawful tax bills? By doing so, the Taxation Bureau has tarnished Taiwan's image by making Taiwan a country that destroys traditional culture. Over the past 24 years, Tai Ji Men has exhausted all means, hoping that the illegal officials' conscience will be awakened. We hope that they will do the right thing by withdrawing illegal tax bill. However, after all our efforts, ROC officials motivated by illegal bonus did not hesitate to violate due process, violate the laws, illegally auction my Shifu's property. We will continue to seek help from the international community and the media, and we are confident that by gathering the support of kind-hearted people, all over the world, we will be able to transform Taiwan's legal and tax system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chan, above all, for reminding us that sadly enough, these days, democracy is not always synonymous with respect for human rights, human freedom, and human life. And this is becoming all too often a problem of our democratic society. And you're completely true. You're completely right. We should stand up. We as journalists, for example, the media community, scholars on their from their angle, and we need to never surrender to speak out the truth for those who suffer, even in democratic society. Now we have Mr. Ding Yi Gao, last but not the least of our Tai Ji Men Dizi. He is a legal and intellectual property consultant in Taipei. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Gao Ding-Yi. I'm a Dizi of Tai Ji Men. I'm glad to be able to join this meeting on United Nations Human Rights Day to speak out for Tai Ji Men's case and for human rights of Taiwan. I have to thank my wife so I could become a Dizi of Tai Ji Men. After I met my wife, the most vivid memories were the trips to emergency rooms across major hospitals in Hsinchu because she was prone to catching colds all year round. And if she caught a cold, she must be admitted to the emergency department. Then there are problems with blood flow, cold hands and feet, and severe menstrual pain. In addition, she had suffered from polycystic ovary syndrome when she was young, with the doctor telling her that her odds to conceive were low. With me, my problem stemmed from the lack of sperm activity due to high-pressure working environment in the Hsinchu Science Park. So when the two of us got married and couldn't conceive for a while, we were really worried that we might not get a baby. It was at this time that we heard about Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy and saw many real-life stories of people regaining health and even giving birth to babies smoothly after practicing healing techniques of body and mind, so we decided to experiment Qigong ourselves. Going in, we did not expect this practice to have many wonderful things, but they happened. The first thing that changed was my wife's menstrual pain disappeared, and then she became pregnant after 6 months of practicing Qigong. Soon enough, our first child was born. 2 years later, the second child was born, and the third child was born after another 2 years. The fourth child arrived not long after. The change in our family from cannot give birth to unstoppable deliveries is too drastic. My wife and I know that we almost gave up our happiness on a whim. In 2006, we decided to join the Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy. Upon joining, we felt the enthusiasm, kindness, and joy within the academy. However, I found some occasions to go online and Google Tai Ji Men and found a lot of information on the year 1996. The news articles about the Tai Ji Men case and the footage about raising goblins had raised a lot of doubt in my mind about the academy. Fortunately, I had already passed the college entrance examination with a science and engineering background. I studied law in graduate school and read many cases of human rights abuses by prosecutors, police, and investigators in class. Finding facts on the internet was really difficult. In the end, we decided to follow our belief and become a disciple at Tai Ji Men, giving me a happy life. On July 13, 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that the Tai Ji Men case had no fraud, no tax evasion, and no violation of the tax collection law. And finally, justice for Tai Ji Men was restored, making us more convinced that we made the right choice. But I often wonder how my life would turn out had I allowed my decision to join the academy been influenced by Google's search results. I'm grateful for the wise move that year, but how many people can be as fortunate as me? How many people have missed the opportunity to pursue happiness because of the negative impression caused by this unjust case? It is unbearable to see Sifu and brothers and sisters to carry on the peace endeavors with love and peace while still being persecuted by the state. Gradually, Taiwanese people and the world get to see the beauty and kindness of Tai Ji Men, and the negative public images have been turned around. With my background in law, I joined the legal team to fight the fabricated Tai Ji Men case and uncover the truth. The unjust case of Tai Ji Men was caused by Taiwan's religious crackdown in 1996, allowing people to report any organizations without evidence. At that time, the Kaohsiung and Hsinchu district prosecutors' offices both received false reports on the academy, and investigations were launched. The investigations were closed as no evidence of wrongdoing was found using the same false reports. However, Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren of the Taipei District Prosecutor Office mobilized hundreds of armed officers and simultaneously searched 19 Tai Ji Men academies and residences of some Tai Ji Men disciples, thereby starting the judicial persecution on Tai Ji Men. Naturally, the Tai Ji Men case was concluded when the Supreme Court made its decision in 2007, and the improper taxation derived from the criminal case should also be revoked in accordance with the court decision. However, Tai Ji Men Grandmaster and his disciple remained entangled with this illegal taxation over 2 decades since 1997. From the beginning until the end, there is actually only one point of contention in this Tai Ji Men tax case. Should the gift money from the disciples to the Grandmaster be classified as tuition or gift? In fact, since the Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy was founded in 1966, there has been no tax-related issue with gifting between disciples and Grandmaster. Only when Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren falsely claimed that Tai Ji Men violated the law from 1991 to 1996 did the National Taxation Bureau use this false indictment to illegally tax Tai Ji Men for more than 20 years. In 2019, the National Taxation Bureau finally admitted its mistake and revoked 5 of the annual tax bills, but left behind the tax bill for 1992 and refused to correct or revoke it. The agency even forcibly auctioned the lands belonging to Tai Ji Men and seized them. This is entirely unacceptable. Moreover, the Deputy Director Chen Yingjing from the Executive Office of the Ministry of Justice released false information and illegally reviewed personal details of the parties involved during an interview with a magazine called Want Weekly. The magazine even published Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren's fabricated claims about Tai Ji Men raising goblins and huge tax evasion and other misinformation to slander Tai Ji Men and mislead the public. After the Ministry of Justice's illegal auction, it issued a press release through online media on September 15 and September 21, 2020, while ignoring the Supreme Court's verdict in which Tai Ji Men was found not guilty of tax evasion. In addition, the Supreme Administrative Court's judgment number 422 in the 2018 ruling has determined that the basis for enforcement by the Ministry of Justice is illegal. Once again, the defamation of Tai Ji Men by the ministry has seriously harmed Tai Ji Men Grandmaster and his disciples, obstructed justice, and violated human rights. After 24 years of political repression, the Taiwanese government still deeply entangles Tai Ji Men disciples and Grandmaster with fake tax bills, affecting the reputation of ancient culture that has been passed down for thousands of years. We urge the government to make the right decision conscientiously and act in accordance with the law. Under a true democracy, the government has the responsibility to repeal illegal taxation and return justice and happiness to Tai Ji Men Grandmaster and his disciples.
Thank you to Mr. Ding Yi Gao for this least contribution in understanding the Tai Ji Men case better and better. And thanks be to him also for reminding us of the positive effect that Tai Ji Men has, which of course brings us back to the fact that it is not a cult, not even, no less an evil cult, as someone would sadly portray it. We now go back to our international guests. We are heading to the last part of our program, so we now have two international speakers before going to the conclusive Q&A session. So it is my pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Camelia Marin, Project Coordinator of Soteria International, Denmark. It may be not very easy to speak after some direct witnesses, but she's great and she will do great. Maybe starting with, in a nutshell, explain to our public who may not be familiar with Soteria International what Soteria International is. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here together with you and to go further on the same path that together with Willy and Massimo and Alessandro, we started long ago in showing the ways in which the human rights are not respected and the problems that here and there the human rights are facing, especially our organization, Soteria International, is looking towards the spiritual field and towards the spiritual communities. From Soteria International perspective regarding this situation that also we are speaking today, we can say that actually the public hostility towards sects or cults forms the basis of the persecution in several situations. The term is used as arbitrarily so that any group that is not well accepted in society risks to be considered a sect or a cult and to have already a campaign against. And this is very easy to be taken by mass media and after that to have all kinds of investigations and so on. It takes very little to create a campaign against the spiritual groups. We observe this in different countries, and I will also say some examples today. In the case of the spiritual groups, the media campaign, as well as police investigations, often turn against the whole group, also because the accusations are usually very vague. And then because it's not a real proof in the accusation, it's just a general looking into the picture and trying to observe the situation. Regarding this, in time, Soteria International and also together with other collaborators, we mentioned the fact that when it is such a case, we can say that the right to a fair trial cannot be limited strictly to the area of the judiciary. Our analysis concluded that actually in such cases, the level of interconnectedness in modern society is too much, and then all the life of those people are having consequences. That's why in several cases, as also you presented here, people are losing their jobs. There are so many situations with the families, and there are so many problems between members of the spiritual group and also with those from not the spiritual group, and including in between the families. All this like spreading or just destroying families only and only by the fact that one of them was sympathizing with the spiritual community. We can say in the same direction that actually the strong currents of opinion makers and broad dissemination of these opinions against some spiritual communities, of course, sometimes of very doubtful expertise, is another factor influencing proceedings in the courts of law. And that actually we can speak now about the fact that in your case, in the Tai Ji Men case, you won all the courts. You had all these possibilities to be acquitted, and all the courts said it, including for the tax evasion, and still the persecution is there. The persecution is against you. We observed during our research the same style of accusation happening to communities from, for example, from Italy, where in Ananda Assisi, in Damanhur, there were the same kind of researches and trying to just discover the tax evasion and to ask for lots of money. And through these campaigns, through these accusations, actually, the government, the authorities, they are trying in a way to weaken the possibility of the spiritual community to continue their path, because actually all these years of just staying in the courts and just facing so many problems are coming towards the fact that you are starting eventually to put doubt if it's correct or is not correct, or to lose your resources and then to face all kinds of other problems and so on. I will not insist more on this. I just want to say that as Massimo presented, we had very clear points, and he was structuring so well the material in the white paper and explaining very clear how actually the situation developed in the Tai Ji Men case. And after that, Willy also explained us in his talk today about the biased way that the police takes in order to do and to abuse the law. And then the testimonies, they were impressing me very much. They were showing the greatness of people who look towards the spiritual system and peaceful life, and in the same time the awful effects of those with the power in abusing the rules, and how actually in a very twisted way they are incriminating innocent people. Just to conclude the points presented today, in the material that Massimo prepared, we could see that actually in the Tai Ji Men case, during the 4 months of this investigation, there were over 400 sensational newspaper articles and over 70 stories, even more, made by 12 TV stations reporting on the case using information from the prosecutor. How actually it was mainly only one side of the story. Almost nobody wanted to hear the members of community story and to look towards the situation correct with justice. And this is showing that actually the society in itself is not so much encouraging, or the reporters, the journalists, they are not so much encouraging the correct view and understanding upon the things, but they are very much taken towards the biased and supported perspective presented by the authorities. And it is very surprising that in your case, in Tai Ji Men case, actually the authorities were so clearly deciding acquitting everybody and mentioning that actually it's not a tax evasion case, and still in the end to be persecuted, and in 2020 to still have this seizing of the properties and so on. We want to help in this case further, and together with the collaborators to support you and to contribute to take back what is yours and to go further with your spiritual perspective. This was my conclusion, reading and listening you all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marin, for your work in trying to show us how this passepartout word or buzzword cult is oftentimes used to despise and persecute groups that, for some reason, governments, people, or churches, other groups don't like, and violating every rule of behavior. They go to the violation of and religious freedom, which are oftentimes revolving doors, damaging groups and people so much. So it is very important, as you were saying, that we always keep an eye when we hear, someone is called a cult. We should always be on guard, so to speak. It is now the time for Mr. Alessandro Amicarelli, President of the European Federation for Freedom of Belief. Mr. Amicarelli, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the very interesting presentations, for the very moving testimonies, and for the also very nice conclusions made by Camelia. Today, we said we celebrate 72 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Generally speaking, we celebrate human rights and fundamental freedoms. Likewise, we celebrate the human smartness and cleverness in adopting such a very important international human rights instrument, which has influenced a number of international human rights law instruments worldwide. We know from the marketing laws that it's very important to keep advertising also big companies. Big companies keep advertising their name for very long time. Reason being that people need to keep seeing and hearing the name of the company. Likewise, when it comes to human rights, this teaches us that we need to keep advocating human rights and fundamental freedoms. So the fact that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has been in place for 72 years, it doesn't mean that we have reached that level of human rights respect worldwide. So we need to keep working all together to that very end. The case of Tai Ji Men is teaching us that also in a country like Taiwan, which has developed a very interesting democratic system, there may still be problems. And I don't want to go back into the problem. Let's focus on the goal. The goal is achieving a better human rights standard in Taiwan, and this gives us the strength to keep working all together toward this goal. I would just like to conclude by reading a very short excerpt from the white paper. The case goes even beyond religion. We live in a time of a global crisis where governments need money for taxes. While this is understandable, it is important to guarantee the rights of the taxpayers to obtain redress against unfair or illegal decisions by tax bureaucrats, and due process when needed. The all credibility of the tax system rests on the trust of taxpayers that procedures are fair. Tai Ji Men are not fighting for themselves only. They raise crucial questions of justice, freedom, freedom of belief, and human rights. The injustice perpetrated against them is injustice against all of us. This is why we should be all concerned about the Tai Ji Men case. That's why we are here. Let's keep working all together for Tai Ji Men, for everyone, and for human rights for all the nations of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alessandro, for concluding on this very, very important note. It is not a partisan fight for the sake of obscure interest. It's a cultural fight for human rights, for freedom of religion, expression, speech, assembly, education for all human beings. It's very important that you strengthened and stressed this note on this very day. We are now perfectly on time. I do thank all of the scholars, witnesses, participants to this important webinar, and I can open the floor for some questions. We still have a few times. I just see a question coming in right now. It's a question from a lawyer in Taiwan. And the question goes like this: we see the malfunction of all government branches in Taiwan from the Tai Ji Men case. So what is your suggestion to Tai Ji Men? What's the next step that Tai Ji Men can do, or any other NGO who support Tai Ji Men can do to stop this persecution? So basically, what's next? What should people, NGO, and the Tai Ji Men DZ do for moving a step forward? So it's a general question for all speakers. So all of you may want to answer. Just give me a sign, and the floor is yours. Who wants to break the ice? Really, Mr. Fautré, go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you for giving me back the mic, the floor. I would like to make a comment about the future strategy that could be used to help Tai Ji Men. First of all, I just recall that we made a statement some time ago about a case in Europe that was the one of Jehovah's Witnesses that won against France in the European Court of Human Rights because they could not get justice at the domestic level. We are partly in the same situation, is that Tai Ji Men could get justice for quite a huge number of cases after a lot of involvement in terms of human resources and also financial resources, which is unfair in a sense and a pity as well. But there is no Asian human rights court, unfortunately. And anyway, even when you win in courts, the minds of the people have been shaped by some sort of discourse in the media that will not change their minds and their attitudes towards the, let's say, scapegoated movement, whatever it is. So I think that it's absolutely important to focus on fighting against lies, defamation, fake news, scapegoating statements that generate hostility and discrimination towards Tai Ji Men and its members. And one thing I think that should be done by human rights organizations is mapping the media world and especially all those lies and fake news and defamation statements that were spread through their communication channels, including the social media. And to have a neutral external report that could be put at the disposal of those specific media who were wrong or had ill intentions towards Tai Ji Men, and also the journalists who wrote and published negatively about the movement, and trying to convince one by one that they should abide by their professional standards and be neutral, fair towards anybody and anything. So mapping the world media and publishing a report to try to convince them to do the right thing and not to go on scapegoating that movement.
Thank you, Willy. Any more comments on this first question? So let me thank you, Willy, for reminding the role that the media may have or do or should have. I'm a journalist, as you know, and I deeply feel about this topic. Many times journalists don't study, don't go into depth, don't take the right information, they just repeat for many reasons I don't want to touch here. Some of them are not very noble. And I just say this is a pity, a shame to our profession. We should just do what you suggested. Let me go to Massimo Introvigne. I'm sorry, it's just wanted to add a few things on this first question. Go ahead, Massimo.
First, I would like to make an announcement. You can I try to show to you the screen on CESNUR website. You can see that CESNUR.org. You can download the white paper or read it online. So I believe, of course, I expect Human Rights Without Frontiers and the European Federation for Freedom of Belief will also publish the white paper, but here is the address and you find it on CESNUR website. And I believe it's important not only to listen to our speeches as we did, but also to read the white paper. And just on the question, of course, a Taiwanese lawyer should know better than us what can be done in Taiwan. So I assume the question is at the international level. And here, as we mentioned it in the white paper, there is a problem that Taiwan is not a member of the United Nations for reasons we all know. So normally, there will be United Nations remedies, but here there are not because Taiwan is not part of the United Nations. However, I believe that the Taiwanese government in this day of December 10 should remember that one of the drafters and some historians now believe the main drafters. There is some mythology about Eleanor Roosevelt, which has been debunked as largely false. So one of the main drafters, if not the main drafters, was Chang Peng-chun, and he was from Taiwan. He was a representative of the Republic of China. And that, of course, also disposes of some ideas that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a Western declaration imposing American values on the world, because actually the main drafter was Chinese, and another important drafter was Lebanese Arab, and the third one was Indian. So, of course, the theory that it's a Western document is totally false. But I believe while it's a matter of pride for the Republic of China, i.e. Taiwan, that it played such an important part in the journey to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this pride also involves a responsibility. And the responsibility is to honor the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and comply with its provisions. Actually, I believe that through side events, for instance, when COVID ends, on tax justice in general, the matter of the Tai Ji Men case can also be introduced in the United Nations debate, and I understand this was already done years ago. So it is not totally true that this matter couldn't find a way to the United Nations Human Rights Council, at least through a side event, but now, of course, COVID prevents to organize most of these events inside the Palais des Nations in Geneva. But in general, yeah, internationalizing this case, keep publishing. We heard that there were hundreds of negative articles, and that some of the gentlemen and ladies who spoke today say, you go to the internet, you only find garbage about Tai Ji Men, largely inspired by Prosecutor Hu's propaganda in 1996. But slowly, I believe us as scholars, Human Rights Without Frontiers, and even I'm editor of a daily magazine on human rights and religious liberty called Bitter Winter, which used to be only about China, but now is gradually becoming international. I believe we should balance the bad stuff which is on the internet that can be Googled, as somebody says, and the only way to fight, as the economists say, the only way to fight the bad money is by introducing good money. And the only way of fighting the garbage on the internet is by introducing good, reliable, independent information, not only the information coming from Tai Ji Men, because some may believe that's not independent. It's like asking to the owner of the restaurant whether the food is good. But when it comes by independent scholars and NGOs, I believe that this situation of prevailing bad stuff on the internet slowly can be reversed.
Thank you, Massimo, for reminding us to go to the CESNUR website, download the white paper, and all you added. So also the media community will have no excuse. We have a full white paper with all details. No more excuse to say I didn't know. We have a second question, which may be Camelia raised his hand. I'm sorry, I cannot see all of you all together. So if in case like now I miss someone who wants to speak, just enter with your voice and interrupt me. I'm just the coordinator. So sorry for that. Camelia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just want to add the fact that actually the flaws in the system, they are existing all around. It's not only about Taiwan. We can see in very democratic countries from EU that actually here we are facing all kind of strange ways in which the authorities are treating with people, especially if they are part of spiritual communities. I just give you an example from Czech Republic, which is known for a very good democracy, that actually in a certain case, they were just taking people from the street and putting them to sign agreements of confidentiality about all the talk that they had in the police, which is against all the Czech rules. They should have been taken to the police station in order to do that. And they were confiscating the money from the bank and they didn't give them back after several years and so on. So this was just in the Czech Republic. In Romania, similar situation, even though in one of the cases, the judge in the court was explaining how actually the prosecutors fabricated the case and so on, still was not taken in consideration. In Italy, it's too famous to start speaking about, but there were several cases where the police was also entering in force and abusing and even taking people to jail without having proofs. And in the end, everybody is acquitted and they are just saying, sorry, it happened. Also in Belgium, the case of Lama Kunzang, the case started like similar with yours, from the same idea of putting the stigma of being a cult on their organization. And from 1997, even till now, the case is not solved. And the big accusation is again this tax evasion and so on. So there are several problems in the system. And here and there, we can observe them and we can just take them one by one. When it is about looking to only one case, it's very difficult to solve it because the authorities will always explain, will find an angle in the law to say, yeah, actually it's your fault. But when we start putting cases together and to bring all these flaws from different parts of the system, from different parts of countries and so on, then it's much more powerful to express a voice and to start saying, it's sure that actually it is a problem and there are biased ways of behaving of the prosecutors, which actually the prosecutor should be equal with the lawyer. It's not about accusing. The prosecutor should just prove the correctitude of a situation, not to accuse somebody. And still the prosecutors in several cases, they are becoming those accusing, instead of being neutral and to present correctly the situations. And then from our point of view, Soteria International, we consider that actually the best is to start putting cases together and to bring the voice higher and higher. And as Willy and Massimo explained, to make it more international, because it's very easy to just hide under the carpet a situation which is local, but it's much more difficult to hide it when it is presented on so many websites and in so many papers and so many organizations sending letters of concern to your ministries and so on. So that is what I see being a solution, or at least an advice for moving a step further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Camelia. Yes, we should bring this internationally. We will have the white paper to download for free and to share. We will have also the recording of this event of ours online. I encourage each and all of you to share this material freely on social media, colleagues, friends, journalists, contacts, as much as we can. Yes, the secret is to go international, and you know we have some experience at Peter Winter with China. When you keep silence, regimes, even democratic regime, can go their way with no problem. When you start lighting a light, things may change. So let's light the light again once more on the Tai Ji Men case. We have a second question, which I don't want to put any hands forward, but it's maybe rather difficult, but as well as rather interesting to answer. What will the question say is, what will be the practical approach to kind of urge government to implement the human rights protection? It may be not our work to suggest how government should act. Anyway, we know that many times, as in this case, the Tai Ji Men case, the problem comes directly from the government, which is a democratic government. So how Tai Ji Men people, scholars, journalists, media types, and all the society at large can act to kind of push or urge governments to respect what we are celebrating today, human rights. Massimo, the floor is yours.
Yes, I believe all this discussion was useful, and I would add a word of hope. We should not despair, and we see in some cases a deterioration in the human rights situation, but in other cases we see positive developments. And I will give you two examples of how both international activities and the activities of NGOs may in fact contribute to improvements in the human rights situation. One is an example I will take from the ministerials to advance religious freedom, originally promoted by the US Department of State, and later becoming international. And again, I read in some media, that's just a waste of time, because a bunch of foreign ministries go there and talk, but the countries violating religious freedom, they just keep doing this. And of course, this is true for some big bad guys we all know, but there is one example, that's Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan was originally listed as a country of concern in the United States for violation of religious liberty. And they drafted a new law on religious minorities, which was not good enough. But when it was criticized, rather than screaming at foreign interference, they actually invited representatives of the countries who had attended the ministerial to amend their law and to offer suggestions. And some suggestions have been now accepted by the Uzbek government. So I wouldn't say that the situation of religious liberty in Uzbekistan is perfect, but I would say that we see in this case how some governments, of course not the superpowers, but how some governments may be sensitive to international criticism, and rather than rejecting it, they may be willing to open a dialogue. And my second example involves many of us who are here today, and it's about France. France, shocked perhaps by terrorist attacks, drafted a law on extremism which would have been used against many groups, not only Muslims, particularly groups labeled as cults, that was said explicitly, and it would have allowed administrative authorities, without going through court, to liquidate religious movements for violating human dignity and exerting psychological pressures on their members. And we all know what that means. Of course, human dignity is a very nice concept, but we know how it is sometimes applied. Now, we prepared a white paper. Some people who are here, Marco, Alex, Willy Fautré, are among those who either wrote or promoted it. And I don't know if it's because of our white paper, but just by coincidence, we saw the State Council in his official opinion accept many of the arguments we used, and we saw finally the Council of Ministers amending the law inter alia by eliminating the possibility of administrative dissolution of groups violating so-called human dignity or exerting psychological pressures. They can still be dissolved if they use terrorism or violence, physical violence, but that's another matter, of course. So it's probably not just our white paper, but it's a general wave of criticism of the draft law by scholars, both in France and internationally, and NGOs. But in this case, the fight has not ended, because now the law goes to the parliament where amendments could be included. But that shows that the activities by scholars and NGOs may be influential on governments. So we should not give up, and we should not give up to the temptation of believing that what we do is just a noble but irrelevant protest. Because also for the fact that we live in a media world where being shamed by the media, being shamed on the internet is something no government really likes, we can be more influential than we otherwise believe. So we have started this campaign on the Tai Ji Men case on Taiwan, and we should not give up, and we should not despair that some results perhaps may be achieved.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Anyone wishing to just add a few words? We're arriving at the end of our great event. So I do thank all of you. We ending on this positive, very positive note. We can be effective. So I thank all of you, Willy, Massimo, Camelia, Alex, and all of our Tai Ji Men, Dizzy, Ms. Ling Chi Chen, Mr. Changbin Wen, Mr. Alan Shi, Ms. Jill Wong, Ms. Ann Chen, Mr. Ding Yi Gao, for your very important testimonies. And let me just, remind you once more that we have several instruments, tools now, free available on online. So let's make this very important event, this special event on the Human Rights Day, not the event of just one day, but using that also in the future, starting from tomorrow. We are all, at some extent, Tai Ji Men today, but not only today, also tomorrow and the day after. It's the fight, the most important fight for human dignity, human rights, religious freedom, freedom of expression. So I do thank all of you, and I hope to see you online again for another event involving the Friends of Tai Ji Men and all the persecuted people around the world. And finally, let me also thank all the people that don't appear online and do a great work behind the scenes to make this technical event possible in these kind of sad days. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thank you very much to all of you. and good luck.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Don't forget to download the white paper.
Yes,
yes, we will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, 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 everyone.